Grab your pop gun, hold your breath, and get ready for a ride you won't forget. They thought she was just another consultant. They thought she was nothing more than a civilian with a long-forgotten file. But they had no idea who Ava Vance really was. The sun blazed down on the vast military base, nestled deep in the remote desert. It was an oasis of technology, young pilots, cocky engineers, and a team that believed they could solve any problem, except one. The Acheron drone was a marvel of modern warfare, an advanced model designed for stealth and precision, but it had been nothing but a disaster. No one could understand why it malfunctioned, why it failed mid-flight, why it left pilots fighting vertigo and panic. The engineers argued, the pilots cursed, and the higher-ups were ready to pull the plug. In the midst of this chaos, Ava Vance entered. Quietly, without fanfare, she was assigned as a technical consultant, a role that seemed vague, unimportant, and easily dismissible. She didn't fit the mold. She wasn't young and arrogant like the others. Her worn fatigues blended into the background, and her unassuming presence was unnoticed by everyone. As the team bickered and the failure of the drone continued, Ava watched, observing the chaos around her. No one took her seriously. They mocked her with half-hearted greetings and dismissive glances. But Ava wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to fix a problem they couldn't see. Days passed as the team fumbled through countless tests, trying to stabilize the Acheron. The drone lost connection mid-flight. Its systems failed repeatedly, and pilots struggled to even keep control of it. Ava stood silently, her eyes sharp, calculating. She saw what they didn't. It wasn't just the systems that were failing. It was the environment. The wind, the temperature, the atmospheric pressure, it was all affecting the drone in ways they hadn't even considered. The engineers argued it was a hardware issue. The pilot said it was a programming flaw, but Ava saw the truth. The Acheron wasn't malfunctioning. It was adapting to its surroundings, but it wasn't able to process the environmental factors in real time. She quietly observed from the sidelines until, during a critical test, the drone spiraled out of control, the pilot nearly losing his life in the process. Panic erupted in the control room, voices shouting, fingers pointing. Everyone was in a frenzy, unsure how to proceed, but Ava remained calm. She walked over to the console, bypassing the standard interface. No one noticed her approach. No one saw her plug into the core system. She didn't need to explain. She didn't need their approval. She was already working, already connecting with the machine, rewriting the code. It wasn't just fixing a malfunction. It was a quiet conversation between her and the drone, adjusting its systems to align with the environment it was struggling to understand. A few minutes later, Ava disconnected, leaving no trace of her presence. The chaos continued in the room, but Ava was already walking away, unnoticed again. The next day, the drone was tested again, and this time, something was different. The pilot who had struggled the day before expected failure, but when the Acheron launched, it moved smoothly through the sky. It was responsive, fluid, almost as if it had a mind of its own. The engineers and pilots watched in stunned silence as the drone executed complex maneuvers, completing the mission flawlessly. They didn't understand what had changed, but Ava, as usual, was already moving on. The team was baffled. They checked the systems, ran diagnostics, and found nothing wrong. The problem had been fixed, but they had no idea how. As the days wore on, the pressure to prove the drone's capabilities mounted. A high-ranking officer from the Pentagon was due to visit, and the program was on the verge of being canceled. This was the final test. The Acheron was sent on a mission that seemed impossible. Locate a mobile target deep in the desert. A task so difficult that failure meant the end of the program. The engineers and pilots were nervous. The stakes were higher than ever. But as the mission began, the drone's systems began to fail again. This time, however, there was no panic. Ava was there, calm, precise. She didn't rush to the console or bark commands. Instead, she simply spoke, her voice steady and measured, cutting through the chaos. "You're overcomplicating it," she said to the engineers. "Let the drone move with the environment, not against it. Trust the systems." With every word, the Acheron responded, moving with a fluidity that amazed the pilots. It was like Era was syncing with it, guiding it through the desert. The drone executed flawless maneuvers, locating the target before anyone else could. The mission was a success, and the program was saved. The general overseeing the mission watched from the observation tower, his mind racing. He had heard the rumors, but now he understood. Era Vance wasn't just a consultant. She was a ghost, a living legend. She was part of a covert operation known as Ghost Recon, an elite unit that specialized in controlling experimental tech no one else could. Her past was a secret, one that only a few knew, but her skills were legendary. As the engineers and pilots gathered to discuss the results, their tone had shifted. There was no more mockery, no more dismissal. They now saw her for what she was, a master of her craft. Colonel Madsen, who had initially dismissed her, now stood in silent respect. There was no grand speech, no public acknowledgement. Era didn't want it. She didn't need it. She had done her job, and that was enough. She walked away from the hangar, her task complete, her legacy quietly etched into the history of the program. The base would never fully understand who Era Vance was. They would never know the true extent of her past, the missions she had carried out, or the lives she had saved. But one thing was certain. They would never forget the silent phantom who had walked among them, fixing what they couldn't and changing everything with her calm, precise strength. As she left the base, the sun setting behind her, Era knew her work was done. She didn't seek recognition. She didn't need to. Her past was hers, and her legacy was secure. The respect had been earned, not with words, but with actions. And as the desert wind carried her away, she was already fading into the quiet shadows, a phantom once again. The military base would never fully understand who she was, but they would remember her forever. Please, don't forget to subscribe to the heart-touching story. This means a lot to us. We love you so much.